A starving horse does not neigh, it screams. In the 4th century BC, a Spartan king didn't use catapults to break a siege. He used biology. He took noble animals, starved them for 3 days, muzzled them, and turned them into living missiles. History is full of generals who claim to fight with honor. They lied. Today, we look at 3 moments when animals were not companions but weapons of mass destruction: the Stampede of Sparta, the wooden coffin of Troy, and the madman's plow of Ulysses. Forget the bedtime stories. This is how you win a war when you have no soul left to lose. We are in the 4th century BC. The king of Sparta, Agis II, has made a fatal mistake. Desiring to conquer everything, he has ended up cornered. His army, the most feared war machine of antiquity, is trapped in a city in the Peloponnese, besieged by Hellenic troops. Outside, the enemy waits. Inside is the silent hell of starvation. Spartans are disciplined. They can withstand pain, but the stomach has no honor. Historical text gives us a grotesque detail. The soldiers had resorted to eating black broth, a stew of boiled meat cooked directly in blood. A dish that, in peacetime, they would have thrown to the dogs, was now devoured with animalistic lust. But it wasn't just the men suffering. In the city stables, the warhorses and donkeys were dying slowly, their ribs poked through their skin, their eyes were bloodshot with fury. A starving horse is dangerous. 1,000 starving horses are a ticking time bomb. And then Agis, calculated, cold, efficient, has an idea. If we cannot feed them, why not use them as a weapon? The plan is one of absolute cynicism. For 3 days, the animals are subjected to a torture regimen. Not a handful of hay, not a drop of water. Moreover, they are muzzled. Imagine the sound. Thousands of animals trying to neigh, to scream from hunger, but reduced to a suffocated silence. The stables vibrated with the kicking of hooves. The tension was building like a dam ready to burst. On the 3rd night, Agis orders the gates opened. The soldiers remove the muzzles. The smell. The first thing that hit the animals' nostrils was the smell of freedom and the smell of grass from beyond the enemy lines. What followed was not a cavalry charge. It was an avalanche of living flesh. The horses, followed by donkeys and mules, burst through the gate in total madness, pushed from behind by Spartan whips, trampling each other, screaming, a sound that no longer resembled a neigh, but a shriek. For the Hellenic soldiers sleeping in the siege camps, the awakening was brutal. The ground shook. Out of the darkness came a compact mass of glassy eyes and hooves crushing everything in their path. Broken bones, collapsed tents, pure panic. In the chaos created, the Spartans emerged, not to fight honorably, but to execute. They cut to pieces the enemies who were fleeing in terror, believing they were being attacked by demons, not animals. Agis won, but the price was the transformation of the noble horse into a monster of desperation. Let's move to the most famous deception in history. But I want you to forget the romantic version from Hollywood movies. Think about the physical reality. 10 years of siege. 10 years of corpses rotting beneath the walls of Troy. Agamemnon, the leader of the Greeks, is desperate. Brute force has failed. It is time for cunning. It is time for the Trojan Horse. But let's look at the scene from a psychological horror perspective. The Greeks build this monster out of Firwood. They retreat, leaving the beach deserted. The Trojans look down from above. Human curiosity is fatal. They see the offering. They want it. But there is one man who senses the danger. Laocoon, a priest. He smells the trap. Suspecting the Greek ruse, he throws a spear into the belly of the wooden horse. The wood sounds hollow, but it sounds hollow with a sinister resonance. And here, destiny intervenes. Or bad luck, as a cynic would say. From the sea, two giant serpents appear. These are not ordinary animals. They are instruments of divine execution. They coil around Laocoon and crush his bones, suffocating him under the horrified gaze of the Trojans. The people misinterpret the sign. The gods punished him for striking the offering. Number. The gods silenced him to allow the massacre. The horse is brought into the city. Night falls. Now, imagine you are inside the horse. Pitch blackness, suffocating heat, the smell of resin and sweat. Dozens of soldiers crammed together, weapons wrapped in cloth so they wouldn't clank. No one is allowed to cough. No one is allowed to move. If a single man sneezes, they will all be burned alive in that wooden box. For hours, they listen to the music and laughter of the Trojans celebrating their victory. They listen to their victims getting drunk, unaware that death is already in their midst, just meters away, separated only by a few inches of planking. When the city sleeps, the belly of the monster opens. It wasn't a fight. It was an extermination. The Greeks emerged like shadows. They cut the guards' throats. They opened the gates. Troy burned. Men were slaughtered in their beds. Women taken as slaves. The lesson. The Trojans' pride made them bring their own executioner into their home. Among those who emerged from that horse, with a sword covered in blood, was Ulysses, Odysseus, king of Ithaca. But Ulysses never wanted to be there. His story begins with another deception, one that shows how far a rational man will go to save his own skin. When he was called to war, Ulysses knew that Troy meant death or lost years. He had a wife, Penelope, and a newborn son, Telemachus. So he decided to play the card of madness. He went to the beach. He harnessed an ox and a horse to a plow, an abomination against nature, and he began to plow the sand. Instead of wheat, he sowed salt. A blank stare, mechanical gestures, a perfect actor in his own theater of the absurd. But Palamedes, another Greek king, was just as cynical as Ulysses. He didn't buy it. The test he subjected him to is terrifying. Palamedes took little Telemachus, Ulysses' baby, and threw him in front of the plow. A split second. That's all Ulysses had. Continue the role of the madman and slice his own son with the plow. Or stop, admitting he is sane, but condemning himself to war. Reason 1. Ulysses stopped. The mask fell. He went to war, but he didn't forget. Years later, Ulysses took revenge on Palamedes, framing him for treason and leaving him to be stoned to death. A calculated man never forgives. And back home, Penelope, his wife, also learned the art of the lie. For 20 years, surrounded by wolves, suitors who wanted her fortune and her body, she survived through cunning. She promised them she would marry when she finished weaving a shroud for her father-in-law. By day, she wove. By night, she unraveled. For 3 years, she held dozens of violent men in check with a simple piece of cloth. When Ulysses returned, it wasn't a romantic reunion. It was a bloodbath. The two spouses, masters of survival, joined forces. Ulysses, the only one capable of stringing his bow, turned the banquet hall into a slaughterhouse. Arrow after arrow, not a single suitor escaped alive. Penelope's fidelity and Ulysses' cunning met in the death of their enemies. What do these 3 stories have in common? The horses of Sparta, the wood of Troy, the salt of Ulysses, they are all about dissimulation. In the face of death, knightly honor vanishes. Only the efficiency of survival remains. Agis sacrificed animals to create chaos. The Greeks defiled a sacred symbol to infiltrate a city. Ulysses was ready to deny his own mind. History is not written by the good. It is written by those who stayed alive, by those who were willing to do what others could not. As Nietzsche said, he who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. But perhaps, sometimes to defeat the monsters, you have to become the biggest one of them all. What do you think? In a life or death situation, would you choose the path of honor and certain death, or the path of cunning, however cruel it may be? Leave me a comment, and until next time, stay vigilant. Reason is your only weapon.